Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today, we are discussing Moana 2, and you guys have probably seen online a lot about Moana 2 already. It's being pushed pretty hard by Disney, and there's a lot of expectations for this. A lot of people are saying that it might even go higher than Inside Out 2, which just broke a lot of records for Disney animation. But I have to be honest, I think a lot of people are feeling the same. This is not the sequel that perhaps we would have hoped for. I've, I don't even know where to start with this one. Let me give some positives first, I think. I don't think this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, especially from Disney. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's an okay movie, and that kind of plays into a lot of the things I'm going to say throughout this. But I think that's like the primary thing to say. This is an okay movie, right? So if you want to go and watch it, go and watch it. You will enjoy it to some degree, especially if you've got kids. You won't hate it. It is, as I so often say on this channel, there are certain things like popcorn movies. This is a popcorn movie. It's not breaking any ground. It's not doing anything crazy, but it's fun within that. Now, what I will say as well is that I do think, for me personally, I think you'll have a lot of people who come from an animation background or come from a kind of Disney-file background, and they will say that this movie doesn't look as good as Moana, the original, and maybe they're right. I can't really attest to... I'm kind of blind to these things. It's funny, like, I look between two different comparisons of graphics in games, and people will be like, look at this one, it's so beautiful, and I'll look at the original and I'll say, I don't see the difference. I'm like that meme from The Office where they pass two pictures of the same, and it's the same picture to me. It just is, okay. So a lot of the time I'm kind of blind to that stuff. So I felt the animation and the look of the movie was very serviceable. I think that was actually probably the strong suit of this movie. That even despite its kind of its rigors and the fact that this was at one point a Disney Plus series, which we will come back to, and is now a movie, I think the quality for me was on par. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of pulling from Moana from memory rather from, like, I haven't actually put a still side to side myself, but I felt it was serviceable. I didn't feel like at any time in the movie I went, oh, that animation doesn't look quite good, or doesn't look quite as on par. I think for me, more what the issues of this movie is it was a show, and what I find. Do you know what it reminds me of? And I think this might be some things to do with the studio, potentially. It depends on how you look at it, but I think that what I find to be interesting is that a lot of my issues come from with this movie, that it feels like, do you know when you were younger and you would watch Disney Channel, or maybe if you are a little bit younger even still, you would watch Disney Plus and they'd have like shorts, like little misadventures that were put onto onto TV, or in this case again Disney Plus, that are like sort of canon but not really. They're never really going to be discussed again. They're kind of like a little bit of fun, like a small situation that happens and it's resolved. I'm thinking instantly of the one that they put before a few movies, Pixar wise, a few years back, where it was the woman who made a child out of a bao bun. Was it a bao bun? A dumpling, sorry. And that's what it kind of felt like. Felt like there was a problem kind of generally thrust forth in this story that wasn't super a problem. And there was like the whole plot of the movie is essentially, if you don't find more people, and I get the concept of it, but if you don't find more people, you will generally die from something. There was no elaboration of the plot. There was no elaboration of character, really, apart from Moana a little bit. Moana got some character development to a degree in this. I feel like all the other characters were servicing her. They felt a lot more like NPCs in a game than side characters in a movie. And I know we use that a lot now. We use that as a lot more of a reference in media, which I find very interesting. The idea of NPCs, non-playable characters, those characters who aren't really that strong. They're not your companions. They're less than. They haven't really got a backstory. You don't know where they've come from. You don't know where they're going. And I feel like that was kind of the issue with Moana's crew in this. Saying that, I will give it a positive here. I did enjoy the idea of her crew kind of expanding in this outing, and that there was more characters and there was more of an understanding of what the island had become in regards to these people and how they were reacting to what was going on as well. Now, again, that wasn't played up to a large degree, and you can tell that there was probably an idea that these characters would start to grow themselves if this was a show, because at most this was probably 5 episodes pushed into a show, and as well there was a post-credit scene that kind of suggested there was ideas. Maybe the post-credit scene came afterwards, but it kind of suggested that there was maybe ideas for more to come with Nalo. I forget the Batwoman. I've forgotten her name. I'm sorry. And Tamatoa from the first movie. So there was clearly an idea of like this being some kind of recurring villains, and because of that, I feel like there was a lot of non-character development in this movie, because you would have maybe had another 4 episodes in this season, and then you maybe would have had a season 2, which all I have to say for this movie is, and all I can think of, it feels like this should have been a direct-to-TV movie. It feels like the movies of old that you used to get, where you used to get like Beauty and the Beast came out, and then they had like that winter one. I always remember the winter one. I don't know why, but it was like a Christmas version of the Beauty and the Beast, and they were like they were making snowmen. Or was it in the main movie? I can't remember now. But either way, there's those sequels, the Cinderella 2, etc. Right? Those movies that were so they were direct to TV. They were made by animation studios who were not the original animation studio. It just feels like it's so that in so many ways. And I feel like it actually would have served better to have kept this as a Disney Plus series. I think it would have done way better. I think it would have, it might not have done monetary, in the nicest possible way. They've slapped 5 episodes together thereabouts and changed some things arguably and put it in a movie theater, and it will make more money than the Disney Plus show will, because most people don't really invest in shows that as much as a movie at the moment. I fundamentally believe that to be true, but I do think for artistic reasons it should have stayed as a show. I think it would have been better. I think the ideas that they had of these kind of like Moana going to these different islands, learning about different cultures, was that fits a show, right? That fits a 20-minute episode about going to these islands, learning about these peoples as you go, and kind of really building out that kind of idea would have been better, in my opinion, than kind of pushing it all together and kind of giving a general future for these people that's like, oh, generally we all start to like each other and we all start doing stuff together, and we don't know what's kind of going on. Like, it felt like the only development really in this movie, and I will go back to it again, is that Moana essentially has some fears that are kind of allayed, and then she becomes even more like a Wayfinder 2.0. She becomes even more of a Wayfinder than the last time she became one. And I will say this, I think this is probably the most egregious part of the movie. It is essentially the same plot. It is essentially the same plot. Moana sets out to find a different way for her people, and in so doing finds Maui, who is trapped, saves him. They hatch a plan from much reluctance to one of the party members at least, and then they go to this island. There's a big adversarial battle around this island. The island's saved. Yahoo! Obviously that's like really boiling it down. It doesn't take into account everything. Oh, well, there is also the fact that they meet a second. There's also the part where they meet coconut people again. The Kokomora it is, isn't it? Yeah, they meet those, and they're adversarial for a little bit, and also they get kind of half they have to deal with like a secondary antagonist who turns out to be sort of bad but sort of not so bad, and yeah. I don't know. I just felt like I was watching the same thing but worse. It felt like watching The Force Awakens and realizing it's essentially a New Hope. And not that I hate The Force Awakens, but it's the same principle, right? It's like, okay, this movie is the same thing. This movie is just a redo, but kind of still part of the universe. And it just feels like we could have done something different here. We could have done something. I feel like something where Nalo is actively trying to stop these civilizations from rising up would have been more interesting. I think, having this idea of like Moana has to go to all these other islands to find these peoples she basically recruits all these different peoples that she finds, and they have to come together to beat Nalo. And then the kind of payoff is that those societies can now flourish all together because Nalo is trying to destroy them actively rather than just sitting there. Like, I don't know, I don't like villains that don't do anything. I'd rather a one-dimensional villain who spouts off their master plan than like the kind of amorphous villain that's to the background for the whole movie. I even rather no villain and it's just circumstantial. Like, the worst kind of villain is one that, like, it reminds me of Galactus from Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer, where it's like, this guy's the big bad, and like, you don't see him, he doesn't have any lines, he doesn't do anything interesting, he's just a big cloud. Like, what? I hate that stuff. It's the worst kind of villain. I'd rather you say it's just a hurricane. I'd rather you say all of these characters are like or a storm or whatever. I'd rather you say they're trying to survive in like a natural disaster. Like, that would even be better. What if there was a natural disaster that was coming, and to weather it in some way they had to kind of band together? Something like that. Something like that has a little bit more grit to it. I don't know. The whole story felt so one note, and more than that, felt like there wasn't really any stakes, because every moment that something happened, almost 2 seconds later it was revered. To use another Star Wars reference, it's like Chewbacca in The Rise of Skywalker, where they're like, oh no, Chewbacca died, they shoot the shuttle down, and you think, oh my gosh, she's just killed Chewbacca, and then another shuttle shoots off a second later. It's like, you're just trying to play with our heartstrings. Like, let's get on, let's move it. I think is one of the biggest egregious things of this this time around as well is, and I still listen to like songs off it now, not ever frequently, so to speak, but if it comes on my like shuffle or anything like that, I'll listen to it. A lot of the songs from Moana 1, and say what you will about Lin-Manuel Miranda, but really good at writing music, right? Loved a lot of the stuff he's done in a lot of the Disney movies, and Moana was no exception. Really good stuff there, the Tamatoa song, the How Far I'll Go, the Maui song, I forget its name off the top of my head now, but it's like, I see what's happening here, what can I say except what can I say? You're welcome. That's the song, and even the other version of that, You're Welcome, I don't mind as well. The kind of the one where it is Lin-Manuel Miranda singing it as well. I like that. So there's a lot of the songs in that first movie that actually have a lot of emotional resonance, as well as a really like funky and fun and fresh. Like, I felt like it was a very different take for Disney in a lot of ways, and I think it works. And I think because of that, a lot of people kind of had Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm just going to call him Lin, okay? I'm just going to call him Lin. Had a lot of, he came on their radar a lot from Moana, and then like to not have him involved in 2, and the music really did, I feel like, be impacted by that. Like, I didn't enjoy much, if any, of the music in this. Like, I didn't dislike it, but it didn't catch me. I'm not going to, you won't see me tonight download Moana 2's soundtrack. It felt like very much how I felt about Guardians 3, where I was like, Guardians 1 and 2, those soundtracks were so good. Guardians of the Galaxy, by the way. And then 3, I just did not, like, it didn't resonate with me at all, apart from Dog Days Are Over by artist gone out my head, but the final song, which was very emotional, naturally. But yeah, I will say, I think this movie is generally not it. I know that's maybe too much of a broad stroke for this channel, but I feel like I've given it some good reasons as to why that's the case. And I think you can enjoy it. I think you can enjoy it, but seeing the highs of Moana, like the first Moana, like Moana is such a good movie, right? And then to see the lows of Moana 2 is kind of like, it's really low. It's lower because of Moana 1. Like, I feel like a totally different franchise, but Venom, right? Venom movies have generally been okay. I don't know why I did a pterodactyl scream there, but there you go. Have generally been okay, right? but you know, 1, 2, and 3, they've been serviceable movies, so you didn't expect anything more. But if Venom 1 was insanely good, and then you went into Let There Be Carnage, you'd be complaining more than general people were about that movie. So that's my take on it. That's how I see it. I hope you guys enjoyed it if you went and watched it. If you didn't, let me know as well. Let's talk about it, as we always do. And yeah, I am interested to see if they do a Moana 3, and if they do return to form for that. I wonder if they, perhaps because that movie will probably be from the off a movie, that you will see kind of a return to form, and hopefully that is the case. But we will see about that. In the meantime, guys, as always, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.